Imagine a world where your life depended on a metal suit and a sharp blade. For centuries, the knight dominated battlefields, but what ultimately led to their demise? Welcome back to Historiators. I'm your host, and today we're diving into the epic saga of medieval warfare, from the evolution of armor to the revolutionary impact of gunpowder that forever changed combat. We'll explore how these armored giants evolved, dominated European battlefields for centuries, and then mysteriously disappeared from military relevance. Let's charge into this medieval adventure. Let's start our journey in the early Middle Ages, around the 11th century. Picture this. You're a noble warrior, and your survival depends on not getting stabbed. That's exactly what sparked the knightly revolution. The first knights weren't the gleaming, plate-armored warriors we imagine today. They started with simple chainmail. Think of it as a metal sweater that could stop a sword thrust. But as warfare evolved, so did their protection. By the 14th century, knights wore up to 60 pounds of steel plate armor. That's like carrying a small person on your back while fighting. But here's the fascinating part. This armor wasn't just protection, it was engineering marvel. Each piece was custom fitted, with joints that moved like a second skin. Master armorers in places like Milan could create armor so well crafted that a knight could do cartwheels, climb ladders, and even ride horses with remarkable agility. The iconic knight's sword wasn't just for show, it was a precision instrument designed for different types of combat. But they also wielded devastating lances, some over 10 feet long, war hammers that could crush skulls through armor, and crossbows that could penetrate the strongest defenses. These early knights weren't just warriors, they were mobile fortresses. When a knight charged into battle on his destrier warhorse, he was essentially a human battering ram moving at 20 miles per hour. No wonder they dominated medieval battlefields. Now we're talking about the golden age of knighthood, roughly the 12th to 14th centuries. This is when knights became the ultimate military force, and their tactical brilliance was absolutely revolutionary. Picture the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. English knights, heavily outnumbered by French forces, used their tactical superiority to devastating effect. They didn't just charge mindlessly, they used muddy terrain, combined arms tactics, and psychological warfare. The famous English longbowmen worked in perfect coordination with armored knights, creating a killing machine that French forces couldn't counter. But it wasn't just about individual prowess. Knights developed sophisticated battle formations. The feigned retreat, pretending to run away to lure enemies into pursuit, became a signature tactic. Once the enemy broke formation in pursuit, the knights would wheel around and strike with devastating effect. The code of chivalry wasn't just about being polite at dinner parties, it actually influenced battlefield conduct. Knights were expected to show mercy to defeated enemies, protect the weak, and fight with honor. This might sound quaint, but it actually made them more effective warriors. Enemies were more likely to surrender to knights who followed the chivalric code, rather than fight to the death. Medieval battles weren't the chaotic free-for-alls you see in movies. They were complex, coordinated operations where knights served as both heavy cavalry and battlefield commanders. A knight's training started in childhood and lasted decades, creating some of the most skilled warriors in human history. But every empire has its Achilles heel, and for knights, that weakness came from an unexpected source, the common foot soldier. Enter the Welsh longbow. This humble weapon, operated by commoners, could penetrate knight armor from 300 yards away. At the Battle of Crecy in 1346, English longbowmen decimated French knights, killing over 1,500 nobles, including King John II. The French knights, accustomed to battlefield dominance, found themselves helpless against a rain of arrows. The longbow wasn't just effective, it was democratizing warfare. Suddenly, a peasant with years of training could kill the most heavily armored knight. This threatened the entire social order built around knightly superiority. Then came the social revolution. The cost of maintaining a knight was astronomical. A full suit of plate armor from a master armorer could cost as much as a small castle. We're talking about thousands of gold florins. As warfare became more expensive and frequent, kings began questioning whether individual knightly valor was worth the enormous expense. The Black Death in 1347 to 1351 also played a role. With a third of Europe's population dead, there were fewer nobles to maintain the knightly tradition, and the survivors were often less wealthy and couldn't afford proper equipment. Then came the game changer that would forever alter the balance of power: gunpowder. The first recorded use of gunpowder in European warfare was around 1320. Early firearms were crude. Imagine a metal tube attached to a wooden stick with black powder that would explode and launch a small metal ball. These early hand cannons were unreliable, dangerous to the user, and took forever to reload. But by the mid-14th century, firearms were becoming more sophisticated. At the Battle of Pavia in 1525, Spanish arquebusiers, early gunners, helped defeat French knights in one of the last great knightly charges. The thunderous crack of gunfire and the devastating impact of musket balls shattered the psychological dominance of armored cavalry. Cannons were even more revolutionary. A single, well-placed cannonball could shatter a knight's armor or demolish castle walls that had stood for centuries. The Ottoman capture of Constantinople in 1453 demonstrated the devastating power of artillery against even the strongest fortifications. The military response was swift and decisive. Kings began recruiting professional gunners and infantrymen instead of expensive knights. These new soldiers could be trained quickly, maintained cheaply, and produced in large numbers. A common foot soldier with a musket cost a fraction of maintaining a knight, yet could be just as deadly. But here's the thing: knights didn't disappear overnight. Their transformation was gradual and fascinating. By the 16th century, knights had evolved into heavy cavalry, still armored, but fighting alongside firearms rather than instead of them. The tournament, once a preparation for war, became pure pageantry. Knights shifted from battlefield warriors to symbols of nobility and honor. Their influence, however, persisted in unexpected ways. The ideals of chivalry, honor, courage, protection of the weak became embedded in European culture. Modern concepts of gentlemanly conduct, the idea of a knight in shining armor, and even the structure of modern militaries all trace back to knightly traditions. Castle architecture also changed forever. The need to defend against siege engines led to the construction of star-shaped forts with low, thick walls that could resist artillery. This defensive revolution reshaped the European landscape. In literature and legend, knights achieved a kind of immortality. Arthurian romances, medieval epics, and later fantasy novels all celebrate the ideal of the knight, errant. Even today, we describe someone as knightly to mean honorable and brave. So there you have it, the incredible journey of knights from battlefield dominators to cultural symbols. From living tanks to legends, they dominated warfare for over 500 years before technology and social change transformed them forever. What do you think? Would you have made a good medieval knight? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into medieval warfare, you'll love our next video about the terrifying weapons that made even knights think twice. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our historical adventures. See you next time.